Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Concussion Discussions series brought to you by Integrated Brain Centers. I am your host, Amy Zellmer from Faces of TBI. And today I am chatting with Sharik Peck from ResiMax Pain Tuner Pro. So welcome so much to Concussion Discussions, Sharik. It's always so great to talk with you. And today we're discussing reconnecting the central nervous system after TBI. And I love this topic. I think we're going to have a whole lot to talk about. So thank you so much for being here.
It is an honor as always, Amy. I appreciate your work. And, we had a chance to meet, it's been, what is it, a year and a half ago?
Probably 2 years now.
2 years ago? 2 years ago, my goodness. And we hit it off right from the start. And I thought, you know what? Here is a person that can help an awful lot of individuals that have had traumatic brain injuries. And I'm just so glad that you've brought me along for the ride. You've helped me to be able to be introduced to dozens and then hundreds of functional neurological physicians and those who treat traumatic brain injury all over the world. So thank you for that introduction that you've given me.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for those kind words. So let's start with just like the Cliff Note version of who you are, because you have your own TBI story that has brought you to where you are today.
Thank you. I suffered a traumatic brain injury at the age of 17. I'd probably suffered a couple of sports-related concussions prior to that. But at the age of 17, I was wrestling and got caught in a really hard headlock. And as the individual I was competing with was torquing and torquing and torquing on my neck, trying to get my shoulders down to get me pinned. And I was looking at the clock saying, 45 seconds left. I think I can hold on. Somewhere in the process there, it ruptured a vertebral artery. And those of you who understand the blood flow into the brain, there's 4 main arteries, and the vertebral arteries go straight up the spinal, straight up the sides of the spinal segments there in the cervical region, and they provide the major amount of blood flow into the cerebellum in that area there. And so when it ruptured my artery, it caused blood clots throughout one side of my brain. And that whole area around the cerebellum was just completely, a lot of it died off. And I had to start learning how to walk again, how to talk again, how to feed myself, how to write again. And, I got to start my life over again at the age of 17.
Wow. And you made a remarkable recovery and went on to become a PT.
That was quite a stressful time.
I can only imagine.
The brain does not work quite right, as you know, after suffering a brain injury and trying to get through anatomy and chemistry and physiology and all of those classes. I found that I had to study probably 3 or 4 times as much as anybody else in the class just to try and get those concepts and those terminology components into my brain to understand them and to be able to pop them back out for a test.
Yeah. Well, we are all so grateful that you went on and have done what you've done and created the ResiMax as a tool to help providers and help patients reconnect their nervous system. So maybe let's jump into, what is the central nervous system for those watching who might not fully understand what that means. Sure. And how important it is after a brain injury.
So the central nervous system, if you think of it in simple terms, it's what works when you don't think. It's everything that's making you do the things you do and helping you to function every aspect of your life, that central nervous system is the command and control center, making it so that your fingers will move and your foot will move and you can balance. It's the right and left hemispheres of the brain. It's the cerebellum and the balance centers and the processing centers that take all of the information from your fingertips and from everywhere else on your body and bring that information up to the brain where it's processed and where information can be taken and a response can go back out and it's what allows us to function as humans. That central nervous system is so important. It also involves the spinal cord and all of the very important structures that keep you functioning in everything that you do. And for some of us who've had a brain injury, part of that central nervous system goes offline when there is cell death. The brain cells, they can die when they're without oxygen or without blood supply. There's all kinds of things that can affect that central nervous system and that can cause tissue death. And when that happens, we've got a huge mountain to climb to overcome that huge deficit that occurred when we had part of our brain die.
Yeah. And I think one of the most common symptoms that most people listening will understand is our sympathetic system gets turned on and we can't turn it off. And that's that fight or flight, where our natural instincts tell us to fear everything and run from them. But it's turned on. Like we can't flip the switch and get it to turn off without help. And, I think that's where your tool has been so beneficial for me to help kind of calm that central nervous system and get that switch to turn back off. And stimulating the vagus nerve, which I think needs some explanation of what the vagus nerve is, since it's the longest nerve in our body. So yeah, let's kind of jump into that.
Absolutely. The vagus nerve, cranial nerve number 10, is the command and control center, you might call it, for the calm, rest, and digest systems. So 71% of that vagus nerve is dedicated to making sure that you breathe, that your heart keeps pumping, that you're creating all of the chemicals that you need in your digestive system so that you can continue living to the next day. It is the most important healing entity in the central nervous system. And there are certain things that can make it so that the vagus nerve does not function very well. Mm-hmm. One of those, as you've mentioned, is trauma or a head injury, traumatic experiences. Those are things that when they occur, they kick us into such a high upregulated state of fight or flight that vagus nerve and its rest and digest and continue on component is shut down quite a bit. Look at it this way: if you're getting ready to be run over by a big truck, your brain shuts off all of the executive functions and says, find a way to flee or find a way to fight back. That's the fight or flight process. And it literally shuts down the digestive system. It shuts down the higher level thinking. And when that occurs, some of us may be stuck in that state for years after a traumatic experience or after an accident, because our brain forgets how to get back into that rest and digest state, or it doesn't feel safe. You see, when everything's hit and when we've had a bad head injury, those structures in there, they're not healing very, very well. And so they're constantly sending this message to the vagus nerve system and saying, look, we've got to keep you on the back burner because I'm just trying to survive today. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
survive. And survival mode doesn't allow us to get back into that state of recovery that most of us desire.
Yeah, and I think you really just touched on something there, that when we're stuck in this fight or flight, healing can't happen.
That's
Well, it
right.
can, but not to its optimal level.
Not very well.
Yeah, and talking about the rest and digest, so that's the other side of it. So the fight or flight, rest and digest is the other side of it. So on and off, right? And that's why so many people have gut issues after a brain injury as well, because they can't turn back on the rest and digest.
That's correct. In fact, if you think about it this way, when you're going into trauma mode, your brain floods the GI system with cortisol and with the adrenaline and everything that shuts off that system. So it's a very natural process. But when you've had a trauma and that's stuck mode, as you say, it just keeps pumping out those chemicals that shut down the digestive system, and they will not let it function. That's where it starts to get toxic. We start not being able to make use of the good nutrients that we have around us, or the vitamins that we take. We can take handfuls, but if that system is in toxic overload because we've got too much of the cortisol and the adrenaline running through the system, you won't digest all the best nutrients in the world.
Yeah. And, I think it's so important for people to make that connection. I know I hadn't made that connection, until after I went through my funk neuro treatment. And it was like, wow, this makes so much sense. Like the startle reflex, I knew something weird was going on, but I didn't know it had a name, right? Like if anybody came up on my left side, I'd kind of jump. A loud noise, like somebody setting their glass down too hard and it makes a boom, like that would make me jump. And it's like, why is that making me jump? Right? Like everything was startling me. And it all, relates back to the central nervous system. So, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say that's exactly the state that we see is when we've had a significant injury, it puts your nervous system back into a more primitive state where those reflexes that should have integrated at an early age, they start popping back up because it puts us back into that fight or flight survival mode. So reflexes such as the startle and there's dozens of reflexes that were there to help you develop as an infant, but they should have calmed down by the time you get into early grade school, but they pop all back up when we've had a head injury, which is why it's so important.
Fascinating.
Oh, and it's so important that we seek treatment from somebody that understands right and left hemispheres of the brain and how to get those back communicating. Because without that, we're likely to be stuck and floundering, not getting our brain back onto to 100% for quite some time.
So, Sharik, share with us some ways to help reconnect the central nervous system. Because it's possible to repair this. We just need to have the right tools and have the right people guide us. So what are some ways that this can be reconditioned?
Well, there are so many ways, Amy, that you can get the brain back on track. But I better stick with something that I really understand, which is why we created the device that we created, that Pain Tuner Pro. It's great for pain relief, but it's amazing to get right and left hemispheres of the brain to start communicating again. And let me talk on that for just a few minutes, because this is something absolutely fascinating that we've found. We can use that device that we created. It's just gentle, calibrated vibration, which is a fancy way of saying it's a concert violin surrounded by all kinds of other jackhammers, which are other vibration devices.
Yep.
It is a really amazing instrument, but it's calibrated to at a level that the brain recognizes so that it can start functioning better. In essence, it's an accelerator for the central nervous system. So, for example, if we're weak on one side of the body after a head injury, we will use the device on that side of the body to strengthen the brain's connections and to help it integrate some of those primitive reflexes so that the person can start functioning better. And they will do it immediately when you address the right cause, the right problem that they're having. So, for example, one of the things that we built into the device is these wings. These wings are meant to help us wake up the connections of the brain with that part of the body. For example, if I've got weakness on the left side of me, which I had a lot after my stroke, I would turn the device on to high, and I would just start scraping every square inch of my skin. And as this is scraping, we're reaching the pain centers very quickly of the brain. So it's saying, okay, is this all right? Is this safe? Very quickly it says, yes, this is safe, because it's calibrated at a range that the vagus nerve recognizes. So we'll scrape everywhere all the way up that arm with these calibrated vibration levels. And within seconds, your brain has received hundreds of thousands of bits of information that help it to remember where that arm is in space and help it to start reconnecting again. We'll do that with the leg, for example. We'll hook this to the leg and have a person go for a walk. You've done that.
Yep, you did that with me.
And it helps your brain recalibrate and remember where everything is at. Well, some of the funnest things that we've been doing is watching functional neurologists all over the world use this to integrate primitive reflexes. They'll strap it on, or they'll scrape, or they'll touch it in the ear and help the brain to reconnect some of these primitive reflexes. And if anybody wants the definitive work on how to get to those primitive reflexes, look up the work of Dr. Robert Melillo. It's a fascinating study in how to get the right brain and left brain to start communicating again and help a person come out of that primitive reflex state and get them back into a happy, healthy, healing state.
We had on season 1 of Concussion Discussions, we had Dr. Kyle Daigle. And I just was watching one of his videos this morning using the Resimax on his patients. So yeah, he talks about the primitive reflexes, which, I'm 6 years into all this, and that was the first I really understood the primitive reflexes, and that made the connection that startle syndrome was a primitive reflex. And, it's like all my little dots are finally starting to connect and even make more sense. So it's very cool.
It's a difficult and challenging world, but I'm just so grateful for tools like ours, like the lasers and other things that are coming about to help the brain reconnect faster, help it get the nutrients it needs. And we're seeing recovery speed up dramatically for individuals.
And, people enjoy the device because it's gentle. It's you immediately can feel the calming effect of it. And it's just, in the middle of your week-long intensive and you're doing all this stuff, and then they put the Resimax on you for, 5-10 minutes. It's like, it feels nice. So that's the other bonus of it.
That feel nice is what puts you into a healing state that you can actually make use of all those great therapies.
Yeah. Well, Sharik, thank you so much for being here. This has been great information. If people want to find you, we have all your information below this video, but your website is resimax.com, and they can follow you on Instagram and Facebook at Resimax Pain Tuner. And you're also offering a 20% discount to our viewers with the code TBI. So tell them a little bit about how that works.
So just when you go to order one on our website, please type in the 3 letters TBI, and it will apply a 20% off discount for you. I love to share, and I love to help people, but sharing is the most important thing to help a small business like mine that has everything invested into creating tools to help the world.
Yeah.
So you use it for yourself, and you're welcome to share that code with others to help them as well.
Yeah. And also on your website, you have tons of videos showing how to use the device and how other people are using it. So you have a lot of great resources on resimax.com as well. So again, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any videos in this series. Like this video and head to Amazon to purchase Concussion Discussions.